Most gardeners think January is a dead month, a time to sit inside and wait for spring. But that belief leaves food on the table. After 3 decades of growing my own, I can tell you January is one of the most strategic planting windows of the year. Today, I am walking you through 30 plants you can start right now, from indoor seeds to bare root fruit trees, that will keep your kitchen stocked for months. Stick around for number 27 and do not miss the bonus tip at the end. The first January planting that deserves your attention is the onion. Whether you start from seed indoors or use transplants in milder climates, onions begun now will reward you with full-sized, long-keeping bulbs by summer. In zones 3 through 7, mid to late January is ideal for sowing seed indoors under lights, giving those slow starters plenty of time to develop strong roots before transplanting. If you are in zones 8 through 10, you can often get transplants directly into the ground during mild spells. For storage onions, long-day varieties like copra are a solid choice in northern areas, while short-day types like Texas Early White suit the south. The payoff here is big. A single planting now can fill your pantry with onions that last well into winter, reducing grocery trips and giving you control over what goes into your food. The second crop to consider starting in January is the leek. Leeks are slow growers, and that is exactly why getting them going now makes such a difference. You can sow seed indoors in December or January across zones 3 through 10, and by the time transplant season arrives, you will have thick, sturdy seedlings ready to go. King Richard is a reliable variety that produces tender, mild stems without an extremely long wait. Leeks need that early head start because they take their time building up the white shaft that makes them so valuable in the kitchen. When you start them this early, you give them the long runway they need to reach full size before hot weather arrives. The result is a gourmet ingredient that stores well in the ground and keeps producing even after light frosts, stretching your harvest season further than most crops can. The third plant worth starting in January is the artichoke. This one surprises a lot of gardeners, but it is a genuine opportunity if you time it right. In zones 5 through 10, starting artichoke seed indoors in early January gives plants enough time to grow large and experience the cool temperatures they need to trigger bud production in their first year. Imperial Star is the variety bred specifically for this annual approach, and it performs well even where winters are too cold for artichokes to survive as perennials. The key is getting those seeds going early enough that your transplants are substantial by the time they hit the garden in spring. Without that long indoor start, the plants may not size up in time to produce before summer heat shuts them down. January sowing turns a crop most people think is only for California into something achievable in a much wider range of climates. Now, if you're finding this video helpful so far, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps this video reach more gardeners like yourself who would also find this information helpful. All right, let's continue. The fourth crop that belongs on your January list is celery. This one needs a long, cool growing season, and starting seeds indoors 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost dote often lands right in January for gardeners aiming at a spring harvest. Across zones 3 through 10, that early start gives celery the time it needs to develop strong roots and thick stalks before warm weather arrives. Tall Utah 5270 is a dependable variety that handles a range of conditions and produces crisp, flavorful stems. Celery is not a fast crop, and rushing it leads to stringy, bitter stalks that disappoint. When you give it that generous indoor runway, you set yourself up for the tender, homegrown celery that tastes nothing like what you find wrapped in plastic at the store. January is your window to make that happen without feeling rushed later in the season. The fifth plant to start now is celeriac. If you have never grown this one, think of it as celery's root vegetable cousin, prized for its dense, flavorful base rather than its stalks. Celeriac needs about 10 weeks of indoor growing before transplanting, which puts January right in the sweet spot for zones 3 through 10. Giant Prague is the classic variety, producing large knobby roots that store exceptionally well through fall and winter. The flavor is earthy and complex, perfect for soups, mashes, and roasting. Like celery, celeriac does not tolerate rushing. Starting too late means undersized roots that never reach their potential before summer heat stresses the plants. A January sowing gives you the full timeline this crop demands, and the reward is a root vegetable that keeps for months in a cool cellar or refrigerator, extending your homegrown harvest deep into the cold months. The sixth crop to plant in January is the potato, and this one is specific to gardeners in warm winter regions. If you are in zones 8 through 11, January is prime time to get seed potatoes into the ground. This timing lets the plants grow and produce tubers before intense summer heat arrives and shuts them down. Red Lesota is a variety well suited to southern growing conditions, offering good yields and solid storage quality. Potatoes are a major calorie crop, and getting them in now means a substantial harvest of filling, versatile food by late spring. In these climates, waiting until the traditional northern planting window means fighting heat stress and reduced yields. January planting takes advantage of the mild conditions you have, turning winter into a productive season rather than a waiting game. If your soil is workable and frost risk is low, this is your moment. The seventh plant to consider this month is the apple tree, specifically bare rootstock. Across zones 3 through 8, winter dormancy creates an ideal planting window for bare root fruit trees wherever the ground is not frozen solid. Getting a tree in now allows the roots to establish before spring growth begins, giving the tree a much stronger start than a potted tree planted later in the year. Liberty is an excellent variety for home orchards because it offers natural disease resistance, reducing the need for sprays and making it more manageable for the average gardener. An apple tree is a long-term investment in your family's food supply, producing fruit for decades once established. January planting, when bare rootstock is widely available and affordable, is the practical way to add this kind of productive perennial to your property without the premium price of container-grown trees. The eighth January planting opportunity is the blueberry bush. Like fruit trees, blueberries benefit from dormant season planting in zones 3 through 10, as long as you match the variety to your local chill hour requirements. In warmer areas, southern highbush types like sunshine blue thrive without needing the long cold period that northern varieties demand. Getting bare root or potted bushes into the ground now lets roots settle in before the energy demands of spring growth kick in. Blueberries are a high-yield perennial crop that produces for many years once established, and the fruit freezes beautifully for year-round use. The key is choosing cultivars suited to your climate. A mismatch means poor fruiting and frustration. When you plant the right variety in January, you are setting up a reliable source of antioxidant-rich fruit that requires relatively little maintenance once it gets going. The ninth crop to add to your January plans is the raspberry. Bare root canes are commonly available during the dormant season, and in zones 3 through 8, late winter planting works well wherever the ground is workable. Heritage is a reliable, ever-bearing variety that produces fruit on both first-year and second-year canes, giving you multiple harvest windows through summer and fall. Raspberries establish quickly when planted during dormancy, and once they get going, they spread and produce annual harvests with minimal fuss. The fruit is perfect for fresh eating, freezing, or turning into jam that lasts all year. Unlike some fruits that take years to bear, raspberries often give you a modest harvest in their first full season and ramp up quickly from there. January planting puts you ahead of the curve, getting those canes rooted and ready before spring growth begins in earnest. The 10th plant that fits January planting is cabbage. How you approach it depends on your climate. In zones 8 through 11, you can set transplants directly into the garden now for spring heads. In colder zones 3 through 7, Late January is a good time to start seeds indoors, so you have stocky transplants ready when the ground thaws. Early Jersey Wakefield is a classic variety that forms conical heads relatively quickly, making it well suited to this early timing. Cabbage is a cool season crop that actually improves in flavor after light frost, so getting it established before warm weather is the goal. A January start, whether indoors or out, lines up your plants for harvest before summer heat turns them bitter or causes bolting. This is a staple crop that stores well, ferments into sauerkraut, and fills the kitchen with affordable, nutritious food. The 11th crop worth starting in January is broccoli. Like cabbage, this cool season brassica does best when it matures before temperatures climb. In mild winter zones 8 through 11, transplants can go into the ground now. In colder areas, zones 3 through 7, late January seed starting indoors sets you up for early spring transplanting. Green Magic is a dependable variety that produces tight, flavorful heads and handles a range of conditions. Broccoli rewards early timing because heat causes loose heads and premature flowering, robbing you of the harvest you worked for. When you start in January, you give plants the cool runway they need to size up and produce dense, tender crowns. Side shoots often continue producing for weeks after the main head is cut, extending your harvest. This is one of the most nutritious vegetables you can grow, and January is the month that makes a successful crop possible. The 12th plant to get started now is cauliflower. This one is closely related to broccoli and shares the same need for cool conditions during head formation. In zones 8 through 11, January transplanting outdoors works well. In zones 3 through 7, starting seeds indoors toward the end of January gives you a head start for spring planting. Snow Crown is a widely adapted variety known for producing clean white heads without excessive fuss. Cauliflower is sometimes considered tricky, but most problems come from planting too late and forcing the crop to mature in heat. When you time it right with a January start, you sidestep that issue entirely. The heads form during cool weather, staying tight and mild-flavored instead of turning ricey or bitter. Homegrown cauliflower, harvested at peak freshness, has a sweetness and texture that store-bought heads simply cannot match. The 13th crop to plant in January is the pea. For gardeners in zones 7 through 10, January direct sowing is realistic as soon as the soil is workable and not waterlogged. Peas are cold tolerant and actually prefer cooler conditions, so getting them in the ground early lets them establish before warm weather triggers decline. Sugar Snap is a favorite variety that produces sweet, edible pods perfect for fresh eating, stir-fries, and snacking right in the garden. Peas are also nitrogen fixers, improving your soil while they grow. In mild winter climates, a January sowing sets you up for an abundant spring harvest before the heat shuts production down. The window for peas is short in many areas, and starting early stretches it as far as possible. This is a protein-rich crop that freezes well, letting you preserve the surplus for meals throughout the year. The 14th plant to sow in January is spinach. This cold, hardy green thrives in cool weather and can be planted outdoors through winter in zones 8 through 11. In colder zones 3 through 7, growing under row cover or in a cold frame makes January sowing practical even when temperatures dip. Bloomsdale Longstanding is a reliable variety with savoid leaves that hold up well and resist bolting longer than many types. Spinach is one of the most nutrient-dense vegetables you can grow, packed with iron, vitamins, and minerals that support good health. When other crops are still weeks away from harvest, spinach planted now fills the gap with fresh greens for salads, smoothies, and cooked dishes. The plants grow quickly in cool conditions and can be harvested leaf by leaf or cut whole, giving you flexibility in how you use them. January spinach is fast food in the best sense. The 15th crop that fits January planting is lettuce. Cold-tolerant varieties can be sown outdoors in zones 8 through 11, and in colder regions, growing under protection extends the season. Winter density is an excellent choice for this timing, a semi-romaine type that handles cold well and produces crisp, flavorful leaves. Lettuce is one of the quickest crops from seed to harvest, often ready in just a few weeks depending on variety and conditions. Sowing in January means fresh salads when grocery store lettuce is expensive and often lackluster. You can harvest outer leaves while the plant continues growing, stretching a single sowing into weeks of production. Succession planting every couple of weeks keeps the supply steady. For gardeners who want to eat fresh from the garden as early as possible, lettuce is the answer, and January is the time to get those seeds in the ground or under cover. The 16th plant to consider for January is kale. This rugged green handles cold better than almost any other vegetable, making it ideal for winter sowing in zones 7 through 11 outdoors or under cover in zones 3 through 7. Lacinato, sometimes called dinosaur kale, is a favorite variety with deep blue-green leaves and a sweeter, more tender texture than curly types. Kale is a cut-and-come-again crop, meaning you can harvest outer leaves repeatedly while the plant keeps producing from the center. A January planting establishes plants that provide fresh greens for months, even through frost and light freezes. In fact, cold temperatures often improve the flavor by converting starches to sugars. For food security, few crops match kale's combination of hardiness, nutrition, and sustained yield. One planting now can feed your family well into spring with minimal effort once the plants are established. The 17th crop to plant this month is collards. If you want a green that laughs at cold weather, collards are your answer. In zones 7 through 11, January planting outdoors works well, and in colder zones, protection under row cover or cold frames keeps them thriving. Georgia Southern is a classic variety known for large, tender leaves and excellent cold tolerance. Collards produce big harvests over a long season, and the leaves actually sweeten after frost, making winter harvested collards some of the best you will ever taste. You can pick outer leaves continuously or harvest the whole plant, depending on your needs. Nutritionally, collards are powerhouses, loaded with calcium, vitamins, and fiber. In mild winter climates, a January start means steady greens through spring before the plants bolt in summer heat. This is old-fashioned, dependable food that belongs in every serious kitchen garden. The 18th plant that fits January sowing is the carrot. In warm winter regions, zones 8 through 11, carrots can be direct sown now for late winter and spring harvests. Napoli is an excellent variety for this timing, producing smooth, sweet roots that mature relatively quickly. Carrots are a storage staple, keeping for weeks in the refrigerator or right in the ground under mulch. January sowing takes advantage of cool soil temperatures that carrots prefer, resulting in sweeter roots with better texture than those grown in warmer conditions. The key is keeping the seed bed moist until germination, which can take a couple of weeks. Once established, carrots need little attention beyond occasional watering and weeding. A successful January sowing fills your kitchen with a versatile root vegetable that works in everything from salads to soups to roasted side dishes, all grown without a single trip to the store. The 19th crop to sow in January is the beet. In mild winter climates, zones 8 through 11, beets can go directly into the ground now for a cool season harvest of both roots and greens. Detroit Dark Red is a time-tested variety that produces deep crimson roots with excellent flavor and reliable performance. Beets are a dual-purpose crop, giving you nutritious greens for sautéing or salads while the roots develop below. The roots store well for weeks in the refrigerator, making them a practical addition to your food supply. January sowing takes advantage of the cool temperatures beets prefer, resulting in sweeter, more tender roots than those grown in warmer months. Germination can be slow, so patience and consistent moisture are important in the early stages. Once the plants are up, they grow steadily with minimal care. This is a fast, rewarding crop that turns a winter sowing into spring abundance. The 20th plant to start in January is the Brussels sprout. This long-season brassica benefits from early timing because it needs months of growth before the sprouts mature in cool fall weather. In zones 7 through 10, January works for starting seeds or setting transplants in milder areas. In colder zones, late January indoor sowing gives plants a head start for spring transplanting. Long Island Improved is a dependable variety that produces tight, flavorful sprouts along a sturdy stalk. Brussels sprouts are one of those crops where patience pays off handsomely. The sprouts taste best after frost sweetens them, and a single plant yields pounds of food. Starting in January lines up the timing, so your plants are large and productive when cool autumn weather arrives. Many gardeners miss the window on this crop by starting too late. January planting prevents that mistake and sets you up for a rewarding late-season harvest. The 21st crop to consider sowing now is Swiss chard. This versatile green tolerates cool conditions and produces cut and come-again leaves over a long harvest window. In zones 8 through 11, January sowing outdoors is practical, and in colder zones, growing under protection extends the possibilities. Bright Lights is a popular variety that adds color to the garden with stems in red, yellow, orange, and pink, all while delivering mild, spinach-like leaves. Swiss chard is more heat-tolerant than spinach, meaning a January start can keep producing well into warmer months before bolting becomes an issue. You can harvest outer leaves repeatedly, and the plant responds by pushing out more from the center. For steady, low-maintenance greens that bridge the gap between winter and summer crops, Swiss chard is hard to beat. One sowing now provides months of harvests with minimal effort. The 22nd plant to sow in January is mustard greens. If you want fast results, this is your crop. Mustard greens mature quickly, often ready for harvest in just a few weeks, making them perfect for filling the hungry gap when other vegetables are still developing. In zones 8 through 11, January direct sowing works well. Southern Giant Curled is a classic variety with frilly leaves and a pleasant, peppery bite that mellows when cooked. Mustard greens thrive in cool weather and actually prefer these conditions over the heat of summer, which causes rapid bolting and bitter flavor. Succession planting every 2 to 3 weeks keeps fresh greens coming without interruption. Nutritionally, mustard greens are loaded with vitamins and antioxidants, adding serious value to your winter diet. For gardeners who want quick wins while waiting on slower crops, a January sowing of mustard greens delivers almost immediate gratification with very little effort required. The 23rd crop to plant this month is the turnip. In mild winter zones 8 through 11, turnips can be direct sown now for a cool season harvest of both roots and greens. Purple top white globe is the classic variety most gardeners picture when they think of turnips, producing round roots with purple shoulders and mild sweet flesh. Turnips grow quickly, often ready to harvest in under 2 months, making them one of the faster root crops you can plant. The greens are edible too, giving you 2 harvests from 1 sowing. January planting takes advantage of cool soil temperatures that bring out the best flavor in the roots. Turnips grown in warm weather tend to be woody and strong-flavored, so early timing matters. For a crop that delivers calories, greens, and quick turnaround, turnips planted now are a smart addition to your January garden plans. The 24th crop to sow in January is the radish. This is one of the fastest vegetables you can grow, often ready to pull in as little as 3 to 4 weeks after sowing. In mild winter zones, 8 through 11, January planting is ideal because radishes prefer cool soil and mild temperatures. Cherry Belle is a classic variety that produces round, bright red roots with crisp white flesh and a pleasant, mild bite. Radishes are perfect for succession planting, meaning you can sow a short row every couple of weeks and enjoy continuous harvests through spring. They also work well as row markers for slower germinating crops like carrots, helping you see where you planted while the radishes mature and get pulled. For gardeners who want quick results and fresh food on the table fast, radishes are the answer. A January sowing turns into salads and snacks before most other crops have even broken the surface. The 25th plant to start in January is parsley. This slow germinating herb benefits from an early indoor start, giving it time to develop strong roots before transplanting in spring. Across zones 3 through 10, January sowing under lights sets you up for healthy, productive plants that provide fresh flavor all season long. Giant of Italy is an excellent flat leaf variety with robust flavor and large, easy-to-harvest leaves. Parsley can take 2 to 3 weeks just to germinate, which is why starting early makes such a difference. Once established, the plants produce continuously, and you can harvest outer stems while the center keeps growing. Fresh parsley elevates everything from soups and salads to sauces and marinades, and having it steps from your kitchen changes how you cook. A January start ensures you are not waiting until midsummer for a crop that could have been ready months earlier. The 26th crop to sow in January is cilantro. This cool season herb bolts quickly once warm weather arrives, so getting it started early stretches your harvest window as long as possible. In zones 8 through 11, direct sowing outdoors works well now, and in colder zones, growing under cover or indoors gives you a head start. Santo is a variety known for being slightly slower to bolt than others, buying you extra harvest time before the plants flower and go to seed. Cilantro is essential in countless dishes, from salsas and curries to fresh salads and grain bowls. The leaves lose flavor quickly after cutting, so having plants growing nearby means peak freshness whenever you need it. Succession sowing every few weeks keeps the supply coming as earlier plantings bolt. January timing takes advantage of the cool conditions cilantro loves, giving you weeks of flavorful harvest before heat ends the run. The 27th plant to start in January is the pepper. This long season crop pushes the limits of early starting, but for gardeners with strong grow lights and the space to manage larger seedlings, late January sowing can pay off with earlier harvests. Across zones 3 through 10, peppers need warmth and light to thrive indoors, and starting now only makes sense if you can provide both consistently. California Wonder is a reliable sweet bell variety that produces thick-walled fruits perfect for fresh eating, stuffing, and roasting. The risk with January pepper starts is leggy, overgrown seedlings that struggle at transplant time. If your setup can keep plants compact and healthy through the long indoor stretch, you gain weeks of extra production in the garden. If conditions are marginal, waiting until February or March is the safer choice. January pepper starting is an opportunity for prepared growers, not a universal recommendation. The 28th crop to consider starting in January is eggplant. Like peppers, eggplant is a warm season crop with a long timeline from seed to harvest. An early indoor starting can give you a jump on the season if your setup supports it. In zones 4 through 10, January sowing works when you have strong lighting and consistent warmth to keep seedlings growing steadily without becoming leggy or stressed. Black Beauty is a classic variety that produces large, glossy purple fruits with dense, flavorful flesh. Eggplant transplants need to be sturdy and well-rooted before going into warm garden soil, and a January start provides the time to reach that stage. The same cautions that apply to peppers apply here. Without adequate light, early started eggplants stretch and weaken, leading to disappointing results. For growers with proper indoor conditions, January eggplant starts translate into earlier summer harvests and a longer productive season. The 29th plant to consider starting in January is the tomato. This is where careful judgment matters most, because tomatoes started too early can become leggy, root-bound nightmares before outdoor planting time arrives. Across zones 3 through 10, January tomato starts are only a good fit if you have strong supplemental lighting and enough space to manage plants that will be indoors for months. Early Girl is a variety worth considering for early starts because it matures relatively quickly once transplanted, helping justify the long indoor lead time. The temptation to start tomatoes in January is strong, but without proper conditions, you end up with weak, stretched seedlings that never recover their vigor. If your grow light setup produces stocky, compact plants and you have room to pot up as needed, January starting can mean ripe tomatoes weeks ahead of neighbors. If your setup is marginal, patience serves you better than ambition. The 30th and final plant on our list is the sweet potato. Starting slips indoors is a different process than most seed starting, and January timing is only appropriate in specific situations. In zones 7 through 11, slips are typically needed for late spring planting after soils have thoroughly warmed. Starting the slip growing process in January can be too early for many areas, resulting in overgrown slips that decline before transplant time. However, if you want very early transplants or have a particularly long indoor lead time to manage, January is when some growers begin. Beauregard is a widely adapted variety known for good yields and excellent flavor. The process involves suspending a sweet potato in water or burying it partially in moist soil to encourage sprouts. Those sprouts become the slips you plant out. For most gardeners, February or March is more practical, but knowing the option exists helps you plan according to your specific conditions. And now for the bonus tip that experienced growers swear by. When you are starting seeds indoors in January, the single biggest factor separating success from failure is light, specifically the quality and duration of it. Most windowsills, even south-facing ones, simply do not provide enough intensity to keep seedlings compact and healthy through the long weeks before transplanting. Investing in a basic shop light fitted with full-spectrum LED bulbs and positioning it just 2 to 3 inches above your seedlings changes everything. Run it for 14 to 16 hours a day, and suddenly those leggy, pale starts become stocky, deep green plants with strong stems. The difference at transplant time is dramatic. Plants started under proper lighting establish faster, handle stress better, and begin producing sooner. January seed starting is only as good as your light setup, and this one upgrade turns a frustrating hobby into a reliable system that works year after year. Thanks for sticking with me through the entire video. If you found this helpful, give it a like, subscribe for more gardening tips, and check out our other videos on growing a better garden.